Hey, welcome to the conversation that's as diverse as the dogs that we adore. This is Gun Dogs and Guard Dogs, ultimate podcast dedicated to talking sense about dogs with Les Graham and Ross McCarthy. They work with all breeds of dog, but one specialises in gun dogs and the other prefers guard dogs. No flashy trends or social media hype here, just tried and true knowledge that stands the test of time. They bring you valuable insights and honest conversations about the social predator you share your home with. So here we go. About 45 minutes of gun dogs, guard dogs, good dogs, some maybe not so good dogs, and a dash of gossip.
Okay, so here we are again then, joined this week by another special guest, Hannah Capon from CAM, which is Canine Arthritis Management.
Hello, lovely to meet you guys.
Good to meet
I do. Thank you for coming, Hannah. Ross, you've got to see why we're giggling again. And we always end up with fits of laughter when we first do the intro for one reason or another. You've got to go for it, Ross. Go on.
Well, before we started the podcast, so Les said Hannah Capon, and I said I'm not listening to you telling me how to pronounce the name because I've done that before and failed miserably. So we'll go with how I think it should be pronounced, which is Capon, which Hannah has just informed us is very similar to gay porn. So we won't forget that now.
You'll never forget it now, will you?
No.
No.
So aside from your interest in gay porn, what do you do at kind of CAM, and what's your little journey been like?
Okay. So my life is an accident, and I guess you can say I've been very lucky to find my passion and be able to follow it. Originally trained as a vet, qualified 2002. It was being a vet or an artist or an air hostess. So vet, one out of those three diverse wishes. And I was in practice for, would it be about 11 years when I had an epiphany. I started realizing that we weren't managing chronic pain in our companion animals very well, and we could do better. And Canine Arthritis Management is off the back of that, really. So I was really aware that there were many more cases under our noses that we weren't managing very well. And it all kind of happened because in one afternoon, I put two black Labradors to sleep back to back, different owners. And both of them were off their back legs. And both of them had been seeing the vet on a reasonably regular basis, just annual health checks. And at no point had anybody really attended to the fact that they were becoming very frail, back legs, pain. And we got to the breaking point where the owners decided enough was enough. And I was like, this is freaking wrong. There's something really wrong with this. And I found myself starting to question different attitudes to the way we do healthcare. So we're very good with preventative medicine in the lines of fleas, parasites, vaccinations, this sort of stuff. But we seem to kind of let this one kind of go under the net really, really easily. And I looked around to see if there was any like constructed CPD in the vet world about arthritis, chronic pain, and there really wasn't very much. At that point, there was one day at the Royal Vet College, and it got run once because it was so poorly attended. I was there. I was like, this is really good. Oh, there's only 15 of us. Oh, okay. So it was actually a day that only got hosted once. So then it really encouraged me to step off the vet wagon and start looking in what would have been at those days called more complementary. Mm-hmm. Had a really steep learning journey, realised that a lot of the people around us, the allied professionals, had their finger on the pulse way more than I felt what the vet sector was, or the general vet sector. And that kind of then pushed me towards learning sexual skills, which was for me Garland myotherapy. I went and trained with Julia Robertson.
Oh, okay.
For many reasons. She was actually just around the corner.
I know, Julie.
Yeah. So she was just around the corner. I really liked her as a person. The course was, I could fit it into also being a vet. So I was still working full line kind of shinwag. And it all kind of came together. And I actually just really liked the real it was obvious. It wasn't complex. It wasn't using tools and bits and bobs and lasers and all this sort of stuff. I really liked a naturopathic approach to it. And I've always wanted to find ways that we can manage this condition which are accessible to everybody. So low outlay, easily accessibility. Because my heart of heart, I want to change the bigger picture, not the individual. I want, all people to have the opportunity to get the long, happy lives for their dogs. So trained with Julia, started having more and more light bulb moments. And then when I was running my mobile clinic, I found myself really questioning the fact that I was spending, say, 2 to 3 hours on one dog. I was like, well, I want to spend 2 or 3 hours and meet 100 dogs or 1,000 dogs. This is what it's about. So I got permission from my clients to take photos and videos and write up their cases and start a Facebook page. So I started just putting my learnings and understandings and very what we'd call now contextual care case studies online. And it just went mental, like really unexpectedly. And before I knew it, it was 500 followers, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. And it just kind of went off. But it was the cohort that I didn't expect. It was the caregivers and the canine professionals. The vets were still not really that interested. And that's me being unkind because, there are many vets that are very, very interested. But the kind of like general movement in first opinion practice kind of didn't come with me. So I kind of thought about things long and hard of how can I take what's really obvious, really simple to implement and bring it into vet practice. And I decided to do something a little bit manipulative where I thought, well, if I'm finding that first opinion, not first opinion vets, first opinion practice, short consults, really busy, high pressure. So I don't blame the vets, but that construct wasn't making it very easy for us to do more for chronic pain management. So I had to kind of see them as sadly a bit of a bottleneck. And I thought, well, if I could get caregivers and allied professionals to be more aware about the condition, they're going to go to their vet and ask for more support. So the vets are then going to realize that it's something to really spend more time and energy looking into. So if we can create the audience, then the services will come secondary. So that was kind of like my thought process of I'll invest a lot of my time and energy to meet the masses, tell them what they could get, go to their vet, and then that will up the service provision. Because if you think about it as a vet, God, I'm doing all the talking now, but as a vet, you've got 15 minutes. You've had 3 people before that person. You've got 6 people after that person. You're in a very, very tight space. There's already 50 people mulling around in that tight space. UV light, telephones going, computer screens, everybody's stressed. It's very, very hard to bring in new regimes. And you've also got I'm going to stab in the dark, 60 to 70% of your client base are not going to be listening to a podcast about canine behavior on Easter Sunday. Their dog is part of the family, but they're not going to go and do greater learning about it. They come with fix this problem that I think's there. I don't know what's wrong with it, but there's a problem, fix it sort of thing. So it's very hard to bring in conversations about things that are quite subtle that the caregiver may have not noticed. So I thought to myself, well, if I can get the caregivers to come in with the right questions, with the right observations, then that gives the vets a springboard to go, thank you so much for coming in with that information. I can help you. So that was the intention.
And how did it go? What year is this, Hannah? Because what you were saying about the vets being a bottleneck, I got into behaviour through, I was a kinesiologist, which is how I know Julia. So I was a kinesiologist, working with dogs and horses. And the vets were a bottleneck, but also clients were as well, because they were frightened to contact the vet because they were, a lot of the time they'd say, well, I don't want to ask my vet because I don't want my vet to think they're not doing a very good job.
Yep.
So
there's so
not
many
going to get it done. Yep. And then in New Zealand there was no laws in relation to who can do therapies on a dog or a horse. And then when I come back, I then specialised in behaviour. But do you think when was it that you decided to do this?
It's a 2014-15.
Okay, so things would have moved on quite a bit by then, wouldn't they, from a complementary therapies perspective?
Mm.
Do you think a lot of the problem is because the vets, well, some vets still think arthritis is an old dog issue rather than a young dog issue?
Yeah, I think
But they're
I
not
don't think it's
necessarily
just
picking.
it's not just the vets. I think there's the whole social situation. You've got the client coming believing that arthritis would never be a problem in their dog because their dog's 6, not 12.
Mhm.
I think, as you say, the education about arthritis is improving dramatically, but there is still a big tag. And this young dog disease thing is sadly becoming a little bit misleading. We're kind of going a bit, polarizing, swinging the other way too far.
Okay.
Arthritis is an old dog disease, but it also happens to start in young dogs. And we've got to be careful how we say that. And I'm not blaming you because I've been doing it for months now. And I'd had an epiphany the other day. I went, whoa, I'm doing what I shouldn't be doing. It's not just a young dog disease. It's a disease that spans all.
A young.
Yes.
Yes.
And what we need to do is be proud and empowering owners for detecting the early signs, whatever age that animal is. We know at the moment that 50% of dogs, this is a figure from a paper quite old now, are diagnosed between 8 and 13 years. And we're all getting hot under the collar of, well, what happens if they actually had it since they were, 18 months, 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
We can only detect OA when the clinical signs become apparent.
Yeah.
What we need to do is be becoming more observant of what those clinical signs could be. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think the 8 to 13 is because they've gone off their back legs. They're really debilitated. They're really slowed down. They've got strong behavioural changes. And I think if we're going to make a move towards this, we've got to say, what are the earlier signs? How can we detect it earlier? And that's going to be via behavioural change.
It's really sorry, Ross, were you going to say something? I'm kind of okay. So my dog, my young Labrador, he's just turned 4, and he's just come to the end of stem cell treatment with Andy Armitage. And like that, I missed the signs of him having arthritis like 2 years ago, and he was showing signs, but I put it down to something else. So things like when he jumped into the back of the car, he would always lead with his left foot. So he would always land with his left front, and then his right front would go in. Well, I now found out he had arthritis in his right shoulder, and which is why his behaviour had changed, and he's always had almost like a rocking horse gait. And when he became an entire male and his nuts dropped, he got this hind leg widening of the hind leg, and I went, oh, it's just because his nuts have dropped, he's allowing room for them. Well, he had arthritis in his hip, and so that was from about 18 months really, and he went lame. I did some serious gun dog work with him, and he went lame. And he went on 3 legs, and then he was on from last July right up until last month. He was on lead and going through stem cell therapy and so on. But I missed it. I was like, oh yeah, he's a young healthy dog. He's really fit. He's like a high energy working lab who will just run through pain. That's what he's been bred to do. He's been bred to go into brambles after birds. So
yeah,
I can, and I've been with my dogs for years, and I completely miss the signs.
Yeah. And so you can imagine the lady that lives in Romford with her puggle who just looked cute. How are they ever going to pick up on signs?
What are we looking for? How do we?
This is what's really difficult about the situation is we've got so many different layers of obstacles. We've got the breeds themselves. We've got so much like dimorphic kind of breeds, haven't we? We've got these really different shapes, different sizes, and therefore what is an abnormal gait? What's an abnormal transition? How can we pick up on those really early signs when we've got so many different shapes and sizes? How are you going to pick up lameness easily in a dachshund? It's really hard. And then you've got the characters that own said dogs, what's their level of understanding, but even more, what's their level of engagement? And can they join the dots that adapted gait or that strange transition is actually pain, and that pain, if not managed, will get worse. And if it's not managed, it could lead to early euthanasia. So another whole kind of obstacle. Then you've got actually diagnosing, how do we diagnose, osteoarthritis isn't always going to do a classic x-ray. No way. And then we've got treatment, and treatment's a bit of an overstatement. It's always going to be management because it's like rust. You're never going to get rid of it. And how do you find the management plan that suits every dog? And how do you make sure that that management plan can last the lifetime of that dog? So, a vet once said to me, I can't believe you're still interested in arthritis. Isn't it bloody bored yet? I'm like, excuse me. Have you any understanding how complex it is? Because when you put it like that, you're like, that is really quite difficult, isn't it?
And describing it as rust is a really good way of thinking of it.
Yeah, that kind of goes. So I've become a bit of a geek and all like the linguistics and semantics and all this sort of stuff. And I realised that Alabama rot was getting a huge amount of attention a few years back. It's probably about 2017.
Yeah.
And there'd been about 200 cases in the UK. And I'd found that that condition had led to overt human behaviour change. People living in towns were beginning to wash their dogs' feet. And I was like, you live in a town. You don't go near Alabama rot potential, but you're willing to take an extra 5 minutes in every single one of your walks to rinse your dog's feet. So we're talking, there's a story behind a big behavioural change, and behaviour change is really hard in humans. It's really difficult. And to maintain a behaviour change is difficult. So I was thinking, what is it about that condition that has had the capacity to change people's minds so quickly that arthritis hasn't? And I was like, well, because arthritis is a really household name, isn't it? It's just arthritis. Everybody's got arthritis. So I decided to change the name. And my first stab at name change went really well because I changed it to Joint Rot and it got shared and everybody loved it.
Okay.
And people were like, oh, get where you're coming from, get the sentiment, understand. But when I called it joint cancer, people were like, no. But the thing is, it is a terminal disease, if not well managed. So there's actually some very big similarities. But because cancer is a very emotive topic, because cancer is quite prevalent in the human population, leads to suffering, lots of psychosocial issues, blah, blah, blah. It was too far. But you kind of see what I'm playing with, where how did that condition get such strong reaction, engagement, public awareness, whereas, arthritis that leads to tens of thousands of dogs being euthanized, probably every month in the UK, why has that not got the same attention?
Do you think it's because people look on it as being an old dog thing? So they don't, it's like, oh, every dog's going to, it's going to end up with arthritis when it gets old, and it's just a given rather than...
Yeah, we don't die of arthritis, so no one's connecting the dots with canines. So my dad's got arthritis. I'm not putting him to sleep. He's, we've got to work out how to manage it. But with animals, we have the blessing that we can end their suffering. But again, I don't think there's been much... It's kind of like, is it socially acceptable in any kind of advertising campaign about a condition saying if you don't manage it well, it will lead to death?
I think you hit the nail on the head, didn't you? I think it is that it's just you hear the word so often, oh, it's just it got a bit of arthritis. You don't say it's got chronic pain caused by arthritis.
By by bone degeneration.
An aging thing, isn't it? Before we get on to like kind of causes and preventions and all the rest of it, what is arthritis?
So arthritis is one of a number of the arthritis. So we're talking about osteoarthritis, but there are other forms of arthritis, because arthritis means joint inflammation. So an inflamed joint, and not just one aspect of the joint, it's all components of the joint. So again, a little bit of a misleader has been it's all about cartilage. It's not all about cartilage. Arthritis is effectively joint organ failure. So you've got the joint capsule, the synovium, the joint fluid, the subchondral bone, and the cartilage, and the menisci, and it's all affected. There are other forms of arthritis, such as septic arthritis, which is an infection within the joint. You've got immune-mediated arthritis. So there's a lot of people that use the wrong terminology as well. So people will say to me, my dog's got rheumatism. I'm like, No, he's got rheumatoid arthritis. No, he hasn't got that. He's got osteoarthritis. So osteoarthritis is a very specific form, and it's a degenerative condition. And again, that's then misleading because people lump it with wear and tear. But it's to do with the joint. I don't know why I feel like it's like a swimming pool kind of filter system. It's always replenishing, cleaning the water. And the joint's a little bit like the same. It's always kind of destroying some bits and rebuilding other bits. And it's in this really nice homeostatic balance of that's old and not useful, blah, 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 old replacement coming through. So it isn't, you're not born with it and it stays the same. It's always upgrading itself. But osteoarthritis sets in when that balance swings in the favour of degeneration. And that degenerative process kind of gets into a bit of a negative spiral, because as the degenerative process takes over, the inflammatory mediators that are created with that degenerative process leads to more destruction. So it's kind of like quite a strong negative spiral. So the causes, this is where people get uncomfortable. And there's a talk in the Chronic Pain Symposium that's going to start really pushing people's buttons. In dogs, because of our love of breeds, we are creating our own problems. So because we've got all of these different shapes and sizes, because we like the look of them, we've gone from being utility breeds where they're bred to have function. We've gone into bred, what do they look like? And short legs, long legs, squished faces. So we've got joints that aren't nicely aligned. They haven't got good structure. They're what we call incongruent. So normally designed to dissipate the pressures, the forces that are being placed on the joint surfaces. Because of the strange formation of that leg, that alignment, that shape, that body posture, we've now got forces, instead of them being able to dissipate throughout that whole joint surface, they are being focused. And that's their tunneling that force, those mechanical forces, into a specific point of that joint, and that's setting up this degenerative process. So the leading cause of osteoarthritis in dogs, and why we now say it begins when they're young, is because of developmental joint diseases. So your hip dysplasias, elbow dysplasias, patellar luxations, osteochondrosis, angular limb deformities, all of these conditions that lead to the joint being used in a way that it wasn't designed to be used, it hasn't got that resilience, is leading to early onset arthritis. But there's also joint trauma, you've got to remember as well. So this is something that causes quite a lot of stir because vet medicine in general is very poorly evidenced, let's be honest about it. But when you try and find evidence to support the environment having a big impact on osteoarthritis development and progression, there's very, very little literature, and anything that is available is very poor. But I strongly believe, in my opinion, the environments that we put them in, it's not just about macro joint trauma of them running after a frisbee and landing badly and straining that ligament and setting up mild inflammation, etc., blah, blah. It's the fact that we have them in houses where they're always slipping, tripping, falling.
Yeah.
And we all know what micro injuries can lead to. And I wonder, and I will put my neck on the line, I do think that the environment that we ask them to now live in has got a role to play. And if it's not leading to osteoarthritis, whether it sets up soft tissue injuries that lead us to loading through the joints differently, I think we've got to be cognizant of that. And if you were to speak to a physiotherapist, they strongly believe that, well, I'm not going to say believe, it sounds like it's fictitious, but if you've got proprioceptive deficits, or if you've got a changed posture, if you're protecting area because it's painful because of fascial adhesions or a tendinopathy, and you load your body differently, you position yourself differently, then that is leading to abnormal forces on normal joints, which is another contributor. So I think, we've got a wide field of view of what is setting us up to this condition.
Yeah, sorry, I'm nodding where I totally relate that. I'm knock-kneed, I'm quite knock-kneed. And so my knees are terrible because I force myself to walk straight. And of course, my loading on my knees completely wrong. And it locks and it flips out. And I found out, like 20 years ago, if I'd been in touch with the right surgeon at the right time, they would have straightened my legs for me.
Yeah, so this is like, so
Really interesting.
I'm learning all the time. Like I see myself as just somebody that is comfortable enough to kind of put myself on the line of saying, I've just learnt this. Yeah, maybe I should have known it, but I've just learnt this and now I want to tell you. So I see myself as a messenger rather than people call them experts and stuff. But I can remember going to see an orthopedic surgeon and I was telling him about the project of writing a website. And he was like, please, can you start getting people to realize that there are things that we can do early on, with these angular limb deformities. We can look at potentially changing the course of that animal's life. And that really wasn't taught to me at university. Okay. So, there are many, many approaches to how we manage this disease, which is a lifelong degenerative condition.
Yeah. And I mean, it's something that's really close to my heart because I've got a lot of arthritis, and when my spaniel, he had a subluxating patella.
Yeah.
And they reattached, they took the thigh muscle off, moved it, deepened the groove in the thigh bone, reattached it. And he was fine after that. But then when I saw the surgeon years later for myself, he was literally saying he would have done to me what we had done to my spaniel.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you think about it like that, it would have saved years of pain. Then I think anybody who's got, where the dogs aren't moving properly, I think it is something to look into. Definitely.
Well, I'm gonna throw something in that because it's me doing a blatant publicity push for the symposium coming up at the weekend. So Professor Daniel O'Neill launches off on Saturday, and the kind of key statement is, how do we feel about being aware that there's predictable pain and there's unpredictable pain? And what he's implying is our breeding practices, our choices of breeds are leading them to a life of pain. It's predictable. We know that. So French bulldogs with spinal deformities, Rottweilers with elbow dysplasia. And one of my dear friends, I'm really lucky to know her, Emma Milne. I just think she's phenomenal because when at vet school and we're learning about predisposition, so you might do a cardiology, course, and you're doing your dermatology course, and then you're going on to your orthopedics course. Whenever you're doing a system kind of like based learning at university, they'll be like, all right, so now we're going to be talking about otitis externa. So this is a breed predisposition seen in spaniels, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, right, so I need to check it out in these breeds. Right, fine. And Emma put her hand up. She's older than me, but she put her hand up and said, why aren't we actually just not pursuing these breeds? If it's been decades now where we're going, oh, so these breeds feature really highly in these conditions, which are lifelong, painful, horrible things to manage. Why isn't anybody talking about that? And that's how she started up. And she's now very well respected in ethics and welfare and does a lot of work about talking to people about choice. And the sad truth, though, is it's not being engaged with as much as we'd like. And I'll tell you a story that's just going to make your heart sink. I was out in Shanghai with her. And I went to
already sinking. It already seems like.
Oh no! We'll
navigate
change
this mess.
We'll change tune soon. But so I was in Shanghai with her. She was speaking as one of the key speakers in the ethics and welfare stream, which is always poorly attended, which is a shame because ethics and welfare is into everything that we do. Be you a surgeon, be you a dermatologist, be you an ophthalmologist, there's ethical and welfare considerations with the treatment and management choices that we make. So it's always poorly attended. And she's doing her talk about breed, predisposition, innate health, all of these sorts of stuff. And the room that could hold 320 wow. people from around the world. And just as she's coming towards the end of her lecture, people start filtering in. And we're like, you're a bit late. But we realise the lecture afterwards is about surgery to correct brachycephalic issues. And you're like, stop the bus, people.
Yeah.
There was a lecture all about how do we communicate with caregivers that these breeds that they're choosing have got a life ahead of potential suffering, and you've bypassed that option, and you're coming for the interventional of how do I fix the broken thing. It's scary, isn't it?
That just sums up life, doesn't it? That just sums up people.
Was it mostly men? Because I can remember. The reason. No, seriously, sorry, Rod. The reason I ask is one of my Labradors. He twanged his cruciate. It didn't rupture, but he kind of like this. And I saw my vet, who was a woman, and Juliet said to me, "Let's just keep the men out of this, shall we? Because they'll just want to get their toys out."
There is definitely.
And
I think it was equally attended. So I didn't do a poll. I'll remember next time for you, Les. I'll make sure I get my clipboard out and just assess numbers. But as far as I was aware, it was equally attended, male, female. I think I try and play devil's advocate. So I do look like I don't have opinion because I see both sides a lot of the time, and I want to stay balanced. The veterinary discipline, it is very hard to be GP now because our knowledge in all the different systems has progressed dramatically. And you can be excused for being an amazing surgeon because you spend your time becoming an amazing surgeon, and that's how your brain works, is how can I fix it, because I'm a surgeon, I'm going to fix it as a surgeon would fix it. You are seeing quite a lot of orthopedic surgeons becoming more interested in rehabilitation, which is a massive progress. And you'll see, and it's quite spectacular, surgeons that have got as high as you can go, like board certified, that are then getting as high as you can go with rehabilitation. So they're board certified and sports medicine and rehab certified, and they're putting their name out there, and they're on the lecture circuit, and they are giving very balanced arguments in these big lecture theatres where all the surgeons are expecting you to talk about plates and screws, and then you get somebody that goes plates, screws and rehab. So I think we are seeing the tide turning. But yes, you only fix problems with the tools that you've got, haven't you?
I guess as well, I mean, the difference between going to see learning about BOA surgery to going to see what we can do to prevent this ethical mess of breeding dogs and stuff. I mean, the outcomes are quite different, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? Because you feel fairly powerless to have a conversation about how can we stop endless suffering of dogs through poor breeding practices or whatever else.
Well, you've just hit the nail on the head there, haven't you?
Well, that just seems
because you can't help but be human and be slightly selfish of what do I want to invest my energy in. And I have a constant debate with myself because Cam has not been easy. It's been fucking miserable a lot of the time. And I haven't earned as a vet properly for 10 years now. I've definitely put myself in a position I don't want to be in. Could be different. But I permanently walk the dogs thinking, what did I set out to do? I set out to change the way that people see chronic pain and hopefully catch it earlier and let these dogs have long and happy lives to the best of their, that bonded pair's ability. And with that comes repetitive, inane, disappointing conversations again and again and again. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, as you said, the surgical repair seems more vet-like, doesn't it? It's a bit more what I trained to do. That's what I get to use the tools. I get to be the hero. I get to be the surgeon. I get to use my brain, all of that physiology and stuff. Having human behavior change. I keep saying it because I want people to go and look it up on ChatGPT. Type it into Google, and you'll realize that the literature behind human behavior change is long because it's arduous. We don't like changing. No. So conversations are hard. If you're trying to say to a population, yeah, you might think it was pretty because it was Men in Black, 20 years ago, it's not healthy. People don't want to hear that. No. And I've stopped going to shows. I did go to Crufts a few times. I did go and do some local shows. People don't go to a show to hear about arthritis. They go to a show to have ice cream and buy their dog a few gimmicky toys.
Yeah. Yeah, the Crufts is getting worse for that as well. Yeah.
Should we change the mood?
Well, I was just thinking about the change, because one of my things all the way through the books is you need to be the change you want to see in your dog. And it's so true. The change starts with us, whether it's in relation to training, behaviour, management, rehabilitation, and what breeds we choose and why we choose them. And,
yeah. Well, it's when you start kind of stepping out of the what should we call the groups? There's different reasons people own dogs. And that's fine, you know, and I try always to liken it. I've got myself an old VW camper van. I don't know how the engine works. I have no interest in finding out how it does. My diesel heater broke a few years back, and I was like, no, I don't want to learn how to fix it. I'm not interested. And people have dogs for different reasons. And how do we approach all of these different populations of people with different intentions and wants and needs and beliefs? You know, you're talking to a group that are already invested, shall we say?
Yeah.
They're maybe more willing to listen. It's hard, isn't it?
I suppose what you do is what you've done is to kind of impact as many people as you can. So actually, the more people that you educate, the more, you know, if you've got 5 or 10 people listening to this, they're out there with their eyes, thanks to you, looking at dogs, looking at the dog's gait when they're working with clients. They're there to see a dog with separation anxiety, but we can say, actually, do you know what? You probably need, you know, if it was my dog, I'd go to the vet and have a little look and, you know, do some investigations or whatever. So that kind of ripple effect that you have kind of created, and equally with us having a little bit more knowledge and opening our eyes a little bit more, that leads a little bit of change back towards the vet, doesn't it? Because it becomes sort of client-led, that we go and we want more service from the vet because we think, you know, this needs some
absolutely. I'm gonna blatantly do a cam plug here. There's a really it's totally biased here because I wrote it. There's a really good tool for the canine professionals to use, as you just described. You're working with a client's dog. You're beginning to get the eyes in. You've seen a few things. You're like, there's something there. That gate's slightly off. But have I got enough evidence and confidence to start this conversation with this caregiver? Because I feel almost like my professional self is on the line by suggesting that there could be something in it. What happens if there isn't? So I'm going to just throw a couple of ideas here, because this is way more common than people are talking about. We've got a tool in the member zone. It's called the Suspicion of Chronic Pain PDF, because it's a PDF. And it was designed partly by myself, but partly off the back of 2 dog groomers that approached me at a conference. They like beelined me. You know, when you can see them in the distance, corner of your eye, you're like, Jesus Christ, they're running towards me. I'm going to hide under a table. But they was really lovely, because they said, you know, we see these cases. We've groomed these dogs for 5 years, and we're picking up on these physical changes, these subtle behavior changes, and we're telling the caregiver there is something not right. And then the caregiver goes to the vet, and it's all like the whispers, isn't it? And they go to the vet and say, my groomer says there's something wrong. And then the vet goes, well, that's great. I've got 12 minutes. Where do you want me to start looking? Dogs highly, you know, aroused and, you know, not going to play ball, not going to give any of the secrets away. So we kept kind of going into this situation where then the caregiver, having had the vet say, I can't find anything wrong, goes back to the groomer and says, you've wasted 50 quid of mine because the vet can't find anything wrong. So then you get that kind of loss in professional trust type thing. So they were like, what can we do? And one of the reasons that Cam spent a lot of money on its branding right back in the beginning is I realized that human behavior change, did it again, really is influenced by visuals and the professional. How strong is that brand? Can I trust that brand? Has it got longevity? So I wanted to have a branding that we could use that could connect different groups, be it the caregiver, the vet, the canine professional. So we created a tool that is CAM branded, that gives that that groomer the option and the potential to write down their observations. So I'll quickly describe it. It's very simple. It's a cross, and at the top of each cross, at each point, there is a circle. At the top it says behaviour change, and then there's 1, 2, 3 dotted lines next to it. To the left is postural changes, 1, 2, 3 lines next to it. At the bottom, physical changes, 1, 2, 3 lines underneath it. And on the other, capability and gait changes. So that groomer can write down their observations, say, look, this is what I've seen. I'm just going to write down, take it to your vet. The vet's got something to work with.
Yeah.
In the centre of that cross is a circle saying chronic pain. Now, no one has put their professional role on the risk. They've said, I've seen these observations, but I'm not diagnosing. I'm not suggesting any more than my observations. So no one's going to lose face. Do you see what I mean? So we created that, and that's in the member zone, and we'd really encourage people to use it because we've spent 10 years becoming something that the vet sector can trust.
Yes.
And so we give you that kind of catalyst to get that conversation going in the right direction.
That's a fantastic idea, even if you did say so yourself.
Oh, thanks. I'm so glad that you noticed. But it's so easy. And this is the thing, is a lot of things we've got to actually look at more of the psychosocial kind of side of it, of what are the obstacles to making a very difficult to diagnose disease more possible.
And the other thing is, when you take your dog to the vet, the adrenaline's flowing. It doesn't show pain at the vets.
No, we've got a tool for that as well.
Have you? Oh, go on then, plug your tool.
Because during COVID, when everybody was taking photos and videos and sending it in, oh my life, seriously, people, having a video of the carpet is not helpful. So we've created a handout where we give people instructions of what will be good photos and videos, so that you can just print that off, give it to your caregiver and say, follow those instructions. Always bear in mind that a vet hasn't got copious amounts of time, so don't send a 20-minute video in. Find the section of relevance, cut it out, and give them the opportunity, you know. So there's a tool for that too.
God, you shouldn't really need a tool for that, should you? Jesus Christ, how to take a picture.
Oh, seriously, you won't believe it.
I would.
I've got a few. I've got some bloopers in a lecture I give, and I've spent hours of my life trying to interpret videos where the video is doing this. It's going up and down, up and down, up and down, and a caregiver is literally running down a ploughed field with their phone, and they send it in. You're like, no, that's not. Or they're like, 60 foot away.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much you zoom in, they're still a speck.
Can't see the dog. No.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh God. I'm mindful that we kept you for ages. Can we have a little overview of something positive that we can be doing for prevention? So aside from, looking at the breed and the breeder and getting, ensuring that relevant health tests and things have been completed before getting a puppy or whatever, what sort of things can we do as prevention and as treatment or
like supplements or joint care?
Yeah.
Don't talk to me the devil's work. Okay, again, that's a bit horses bolted type thing in my mind, and also I think there's so little evidence to support it. And then the next level of obstacle is the actual quality of the products that are out there. So yes, I'm going to come back to that in a bit, and I'm going to play in Ross's camp of Let's Be Happy for just a little bit.
Right.
So something I've
Ross
become...
happy. How do you
a little while, a glimmer of happiness for a bit.
It's a cynic over there.
Happy playpen, please. So going back to what I said right at the beginning, I'm from a very average family that have had Labradors, as a child, but low-income family. We wouldn't have been able to afford insurance, so we would have been lucky if we could afford Metacam, just as and when needed type thing. So I'm really conscious that there's a huge proportion of the population that are not in the position to invest heavily. They may be scared of going to the vet. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to be put in the position that they've got to make choice. They don't want to be told that they've got to find an extra £80 a month, whatever it might be. We have got big problems here. So the biggest player, it's just phenomenally influential on development and progression and clinical severity, is weight. And it's, I just get really annoyed because it's so freaking obvious. It's not like it's even hidden. It's visual. It's right in front of us. It's there every single day. You don't have to look hard to work out whether your dog is a good weight or not. And so I'll talk about a study that was done a while back, and it's very well respected. And what they achieved is I keep saying phenomenal, but it was a 15-year study, and clinical trials, if you've got a drug coming to market or a supplement, they like 28 days. If you're lucky, they might hit 90 days. To do a 15-year study where you follow 40 odd dogs for 15 years is insane. So what they simply did is they took they got a load of Labradors, they kind of matched up siblings and near siblings, so they were genetically very similar. Their body mass, shape were very similar. Matched up males to males, females to females, and they split them down the middle. And one group, from the age of 8 weeks, they had a more ad lib feeding, whereas the other group always had 75% of what the ad lib group ate. So the day after, they would have measured out what the control group had, and the restricted feeding would have 75%. Really simple, labor intensive, 15 years. And what they found is that osteoarthritis in the control group, which were just ad lib, set up a lot earlier, many, many years. I can't remember the years, so I'm not going to make it up, but we're talking significant number of years more. Progression was dramatically more, and end of life was like 2 years earlier. So I can get you the figures. I wish I had a memory that could remember exacts, but I can't today. It's Easter Sunday, for God's sake. You're supposed to be drinking by now. Anyway, so we got this incredible study. And what a lot of people don't talk about is what the body condition scores of the two different groups were. So the ad lib group was 6.7 and the control group was 4.7. So when people recite this study or do a version of it, they often they don't mention this section. And the reason this is important is many people are getting their dogs from an 8 down to a 6, and they're going, I did really well. You're like, no, you're not. Your dog is still carrying excess weight. And again, this goes back to a bit of a human behavior change thing, is that as a vet, you've got a person that's got a dog that's 7.5, 8 out of 9 body condition score. And you get them down to 6 after arduous weeks and weeks of nagging and checking in. And you go, oh, God, I can't keep nagging them. This will be good enough. Is it? And quite often people will say, as long as your dog's, body condition score, 5, 5.5 out of 9. No, actually, the group that had a significant difference were 4.7. So smack bang in that 1 to 9 scale. And the reason I say this is body condition scoring is very easy for everybody. You don't have to have a veterinary degree to do it. You don't even need to be a canine professional. Caregivers can do this. And we can make a massive difference. And we're only talking about orthopedic joint disease. We know that weight carriage affects all the other systems, cardiovascular, endocrine system. We know that it leads to depression type behaviors. They become very, very apathetic, very lethargic about life. They don't have that zest, because when the weight comes off, they'll be like, oh my God, my dog's so happy. And you're like, yeah. Carrying excess weight is phenomenally bad. So the easiest thing for everybody, and it saves you money.
Well, yes.
is let's start addressing what we're doing with how much we're feeding, what we're feeding, etc.
Cool. And what about sort of exercise and things? I presume you see people wandering about with ball throwers in their hand, which is like,
you're baiting me now, aren't you?
but obviously, go on, sorry.
Well, there's quite a lot of story behind this, because I developed a bit of an issue about ball throwing a while back, and I guess I sometimes shoot from the hip a little bit. And to me, it's kind of a logical thing. When you start having an understanding, a basic understanding of behaviour and a basic understanding of physiotherapy and a basic understanding of orthopedics, like I'm a jack of all trades, and you're looking at this repetitive, high impact, hugely aroused, can't freaking simmer down dogs, and you're like, I think this is a really toxic soup that we're doing here. So I kind of I started putting it on my social media that I was like, this is mental, mate. Come on, what are we doing? And I had real supporters that, yeah, I totally see it, yeah. And I got some serious haters as well. Generally, most people go, actually, I've had a chance to think about it. I'm going to mull it over. I can see what you're saying. I find it hard because I think it makes my dog happy. So I really don't want to stop doing it because I think my dog's happy. I'm going to play with that. I don't necessarily believe that they are. But I really encourage people to look at the activities that they do with their dog and whether they are suitable for them both mentally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
So flyball's the interesting one for you then?
Flyball's a really interesting one because, again, you've got a different group of people though.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to put everyone in the same box, but we are definitely seeing people that are doing dog sports aware that physical condition counts and actually investing into them being physically fit to carry out that activity. And a big group of them will invest in physiotherapy. They will be working on warm-ups and cool-downs. They will be doing good physical checkovers, making sure that they're sound. Again, I can't get my head around the sports because I personally just think that they're so aroused. And I'm a, excuse me, everybody, I'm a very basic dog owner. My dog's my mate. I'm Swallows and Amazons. We go down, we sit there, eat a vegan sausage roll together. We go for a sea swim, we chill out, go to pub. That's me and Luna and Elsie. I'm not in the mindset of asking them to do high-end sports, and I don't have any problem with people wanting to do that. But I do say, let's everybody look at what we ask of our beloveds and how can we make sure that we care for them so they have a long and happy lifespan.
I think things are changing. Do you, Ross? Do you remember we did the I did the Canine Athlete Seminar for the Kennel Club back in 2014, and then we did one with the CFBA as well, didn't we? We went through all the different dog sports and warming up and cooling down because that was my speciality at the time. And I think things have really changed. They're starting to bring in better equipment. They're not using the really horrible wooden lats anymore, and I think equipment's changing for the better. And I definitely think, like when I think back to when I was a kinesiologist, people wouldn't even consider. I mean, I can remember being laughed at by gun dog trainers as a gun dog trainer myself, when I would say I wouldn't do less rights and go back to dogs until they're over 10 month, 12 month, and I always warm them up first. They used to laugh at me.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, let's not get the dog spinning around until we've warmed it up first, until it's over a year old. And I think things are improving, definitely. But I think there's still room for improvements, like going forward as well.
Yeah, it is. No, Ross, do some talking, please. Because
I was just going to say, I think a lot of the dog sport competitors, I mean, obviously, like you keep saying, there's a mixed bag across all kind of disciplines, whatever. But I think a lot of people now are, they are aware of these things. They do love their dogs and they do want to, have the dog for as long as they possibly can and, have success with that dog. So the people do warm up and cool down and go to the physio and
exactly
things like that. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people that don't, but definitely more now than like 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think it's really difficult. Like I'm definitely learning over the years how to put myself into the position where I achieve that ambition, which I think is actually impossible, but I'm not going to admit that to myself. And I've had to learn a lot how to connect with people to get the best out of the ripple that we're trying to create. You can just imagine this, Ross. So I used to do practice trainings, and I did a couple of owner evenings, and there's me coming going, leech to death. People are like, I thought it was with cheese and biscuits and wine with this. Can we have it early? So that approach doesn't work. what we've got to do is really try and chat with people about what is their wishes, their desires, their beliefs, and how can we get the best out of that situation. And I hope to try and remain quite humble. I know that I'm not the most healthy person in the world because I like beer. I quite like a lot of beer. I like whiskey too. And there would be some health freak that looks at me and says, you need to change the way that you behave, Hannah, because that's probably not going to be great for your liver. I'm like, well, I don't really want to. I'm quite happy to moderate it, but I'm not stopping it. And if I say that about myself, how can I say to somebody else, you shouldn't do this with your dog? And we don't actually have the data to show it yet. We haven't got anything to really put our finger on. But I'm really conscious of giving people the tools with what they've got, with the time, the physical situation that they're in. Maybe somebody's listening to this. Please let somebody listen to this. But say somebody is listening to this and they have got 3 kids. Their husband's left them. Their mum's just had a stroke, but they've got their absolutely beloved Labrador. And they're like, I know that I'm seeing change and I'm terrified of going to the vet because what happens if they suggest things that I just cannot do? I can't afford, I haven't got the time. And that person will then, having had that conversation with the vet, every time they look at their dog again, will feel guilt because they can't commit to what was suggested to them. And I'm really conscious of never doing that to somebody. I want to give people the tools to do the best with what they've got. And, so I just think that I hope with Canine Arthritis Management, we can create a platform where we can just keep giving people empathetic tidbits of advice to get the best in the situation that they've got.
I mean, it's a great site. I've been recommended by quite a few vets to go to it. And the lady who does physio, she recommended your site as well. That's how I come across it, because it was recommended by my vet.
I really want to spend a lot of time redoing it all, but it's kind of grown quite a lot. We've got it's quite cool actually. So it was just me and my dog for years, and I would do it in and around working full time and doing my independent service. And then luckily I met a guy in a car park who became my best friend, who's now my project manager. And then we've met other people in car parks. So no, I'm not joking. I know you're thinking she's having a laugh here. The vast majority of the CAM team we've met in car parks. So we've got a team of around about 8 of us now. Four of us are kind of semi-full time on it type, but that sounds stupid saying semi-full time, but flexible. But it's a massive team now. We've got the website, the member zone, we do podcast, we have lots of member zone specials where we interview experts. We have the tea and chats. We're always building new resources recently diagnosed kit, acute flare kit, how to get your dog to use a ramp kit, how to do nail care kit. So we've got all these resources always being built, and they're evidenced and branded so that they're strong, so people can use them in all professional fields. And then we've got our education centres. So we've got courses for vets, canine professionals and caregivers. We do lots of lecturing, international now. So I get to fly places and go and give lectures. And so there's a lot going on. The website's still great, but I learn weekly of stuff that I could do better.
What is your website address, just while we're on that subject?
caninearthritis.co.uk.
Cool. And can you just, before we let you go, can you just tell us a little bit about supplements and whether only questions we've had from other people is what supplements, are they good? Are they preventative? Do they help?
I think it's a really tricky one. Okay, so let's just, first of all, I just want to put it out there that if you can't afford supplements, don't get your knickers in a twist about it. I don't give my dog supplements, and I probably won't. I've made the choice to have my dog on a prescription diet that has the omega-3 fatty acids incorporated into it in a balanced way. Done, dusted, signed off, not thinking about it anymore. In my last dog, Holly, I broke my credit card by trying everything out. And I'm kind of much more aware of the evidence, and also having the strength of character to go, you're looking at a very marginal gain if you're going to get one at all, and you're looking for a massive outlay. ongoing. So where would that money be better spent? And for me, the money will be better spent doing hydro, doing physiotherapy, making sure that I've got rugs down, not throwing the ball, keeping my dog lean, doing home massage, putting a coat on after exercise, keep them warm so they cool down slowly, make sure they've got a good dog bed. All of this is lifestyle medicine, which is a very, very strong and growing discipline in the human sector. So if you can't afford supplements, don't get yourself caught up in it. With regards to supplements, the next layer is there's a wealth of shit out there. Let me just tell you a story, because this will just crease you up, Ross. You're going to be like, oh my God, Hannah on a mission. So I get this email about 2018 from somebody saying, I didn't know you endorsed a supplement. And I was like, definitely don't. Cam doesn't endorse any supplements. Oh, well, your face is all over their website. And I was like,
Oh God.
So this company, they'd been heavy on social media, UK's #1 joint supplement, big in your face marketing campaign. And you go to their website, and sure enough, they've taken a photo of our website, put it on theirs, and put vet approved underneath. And I was like, oh, could you contact them? No way to get hold of them at all. So what we did, very funny. So we started going through these social media posts, and we found that the first person to like the post was repetitive. It's the same person. And this person had unfortunately left their Facebook open. So we could go and learn all about them. And it was a guy that had been running a bodybuilding company. And he had a bodybuilding supplement. And we went to company's house, and we found out that business had closed. And lo and behold, a canine joint supplement company had just launched in that February. So he'd become the UK's #1 joint supplement in 3 months.
Yeah.
3 months he'd become that. So I contacted him direct via his Facebook page. He went, take my fucking face off your fucking website. And the reason I tell you that story is you really have to be careful about what you buy. And it is a dead cert that you will have trade if you put out a joint supplement, if you are well marketed, if you touch the nerves of people that are watching their dogs suffer. Of course, you've got a market there, haven't you? No one wants to watch their dog in pain. Everybody would spend extra money because it's convenient. You've got your iPad out, it's 11 o'clock at night, you can just press buy. So that's my next layer. Please don't get sucked in to that, because it's a minefield. With regards to supplements that are available, there are now a couple of good review papers where they've done meta-analysis, where they've looked at different clinical trials and kind of coalesced the material and tried to make gross kind of statements about where we're at. Omega-3 fatty acids, EPA, DHA, ETA, they've got strong evidence, and they're scientifically plausible the way that they work. Next in line, the undernatured type 2 collagen, collecting a bit more whammy. Then you've got your green lip muscle group. Yes. So there is developing evidence. It is very poor. And you just sit there going, if I had a caregiver come to me and say, I want to spend, I'm going to take on board a supplement, I would still be saying, are you kicking that football around the garden repeatedly? Well, I'd stop that first, because that is going to be having a massive impact on joints and soft tissue. Nothing that a supplement's ever going to be able to touch. So I think, don't get hugely caught up in it. If you can keep your dog lean, if you can look at the activities your dog does and make sure they're positive for them physically and mentally, I think you're on a really stronger direction than not doing that and cashing in on a supplement that you saw on Facebook.
That's great.
Common
That's really
sense,
good.
isn't it? Common sense.
Well, it
A little
is.
bit of common sense.
Oh, well, again, I've got another terrible story for you, because I do like poking the beast. I got asked to do a lecture for a National Physiotherapy Association about supplements, and I was really torn about doing a very long, dreary one looking at clinical papers and all that. So I decided to launch with a little bit of stand-up comedy instead, because I thought it was a much better alternative. So I made a load of slides talking about, using regular caregiver phrases, and how there's a huge contradiction in the way people view supplements compared to drugs. And people will say to me, "Oh, I just don't want him to be on drugs." Oh yeah, no, I'm really happy to spend £120 a month on something that probably doesn't work. It's still a pill, it's still done its gob, And then you'll say to people, well, that medication, but I'm scared of side effects. I'm like, well, if you're given a supplement, you think it's going to work, for it to be clinically effective, it's got to have the risk of side effects. If it's going to clinically change something, it could clinically change it for the worst. So I had all these stand-up comedy slides where I was just poking the beast. But then I kind of finished off with, many of you are going to be young females, animal lovers. That means that you probably are caring about the planet. You probably have got your mind switched on about environmental impacts of the decisions that we make. How awful is it for the world that we're harvesting this stuff, marketing it, packaging, producing it, sending it, carbon footprinting it, giving it to a dog. Dog doesn't really want it, doesn't like its food anymore because you just stuffed a pill in it yet again. Doesn't make any sense, does it? So what is it? What is this human behavior that's driving us to use it? When you look at that.
So, is it social media and influencers and
it's uncertainty, I think.
Topic,
I think there's also just desperation, uncertainty, having to have those feelings. I've done everything that I can.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff to talk to ourselves about why we do the behaviours that we do. And I can only just draw on how I felt with Holly. When you're looking at your best friend struggling and you've got all the guilt of what could I have done earlier, what could I have done differently, you will go to all lengths to try and correct that. And I know next time round, I'm going to be more conscious of myself and why I'm doing what I'm doing to my own head, if that makes sense.
I think a lot of it comes from a good place. We all we want longevity with our dogs. We want health. So actually, if we can supplement their food and we think we're doing well because it said so on Facebook or whatever, then that's what we do, isn't it? And we don't think about, should we have a rug down on the parquet floor or not? Do you know what I mean? Because that's not...
Because human behaviour change is harder than popping a pill that you just got in the post,
Human behaviour change is virtually impossible.
What is the take-home story of today?
Maintaining the change is even less.
Yeah, it is fascinating though. Like Liz and Ross, do you take supplements?
Yes,
you do, Liz.
I do.
Ross? No. What do you take, Liz?
Oh, there's a lot in it. It's should I say the brand?
Well, you can say whatever you want. It's your podcast.
So it's Vitals. It's the one that's got, it's a multivitamin and it's got the different oils in it as well.
Right.
The joint,
And do you think it makes a difference?
Well, I'm on month 2 and they recommend 3 months. And I'm sleeping better. I am sleeping better. Is it making a difference other than sleeping? Don't know.
No.
I've said I'm going to give it 3 months and then decide what I'm going to do.
Well, what's interesting is we know that the placebo effect is 30 to 50%.
Yeah, I can believe
no matter what you use.
Yeah.
And whether it's placebo or what we should be saying, it's a culmination of caregiver placebo with regression to the mean, But we know that in clinical trials with medications such as non-steroidals, the placebo group, you will see a 30% improvement minimum. So you're taking that supplement, is your efficacious kind of a result endpoint above 30% improvement? It's so hard, isn't it? It is really
difficult. And there's some supplements like I won't take collagen at all because I've got Raynaud's and it makes it worse. So there's a lot of supplements, but this one I did a bit of research in it and it looked really good. And I was looking for a good supplement, but oh, and I
Probably
take
they
a
all look good, don't they? Like
probiotic. They
I
do.
scroll through Instagram and whatever, and there's always this stuff coming up for your skin and your liver and everything
Oh,
else.
I looked into face yoga last night.
Oh
I'm
my God.
sold.
And but I think you hit the nail on the head, Helen, because you said with scrolling, we're really tired. 11 o'clock at night, we're shattered, we've got all this stuff, we're worrying about the dog, we're worrying about our health. And then you've got the influencers popping up and saying, this is miraculous, this will change your life, this will help your dog, this. You're lying there, you're absolutely shattered. You've got your PayPal or whatever it is set up, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to try one more thing. Bye.
Yeah.
And then you've, before you realise it, you've set up a monthly subscription, and it's just it is like that.
It is. And I think
It's hard.
I guess I'm just trying to get people to feel confident and comfortable in the things that we have got evidence about, get them in place. It is from good intention that I poke the beast, if that makes sense. And I just think, well, I'm sure that you could all agree with me. If I had a Springer Spaniel, rotten elbows, joint rot, both elbows, all the myofascial changes that come with that, so we've got some muscles that have withered and wasted through disuse, and we've got others that are hypertonic and overworking, and we've got myofascial changes through neck, back. What is going to make the biggest difference to that dog? Is it walking them gently and kindly and keeping their mind active, getting them out, regular and often, stopping lobbing the ball down the garden, stop them falling down the back steps and doing the stairs at high speed and hitting the laminate floor at the bottom, or putting them on a joint supplement that no one has ever heard of before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
See, it's a happy endpoint.
It's a happy.
It's a happy endpoint.
And that doesn't cost you anything, does it? To help you
No.
that step and all the rest of it, and just be a little bit of what you're doing.
No, there's something called it's called the expectation pyramid. So a lot of the tools that we create is actually me trying to get my head around what the literature says, what happens in first opinion practice, what I hear online, and trying to bring together a tool, a resource that actually marries up very different areas and make it useful to the majority. And we've got this diagram, it's called the expectation pyramid. And on the bottom row, there's 4 cubes, and there's 3 cubes, and there's 2 cubes, and there's on the top, there's 1. And at the bottom, it's like identify pain. Next one along is work with your vet, because your vet's the only one that's legally allowed to diagnose and prescribe. Get a correct diagnosis. Don't just stab in the dark, or, finger on the nose, look ahead, oh, it's arthritis, touch the dog, examine the dog, try and localize the problem. And you work up the pyramid, pain control is central to everything that we do. We've got weight loss on one side, physical activity, home environment modifications. Next layer up, we're looking at our joint supplements, nutrition, and our physiotherapies, hydrotherapies. But the top cube, I wrote rebuild. And for me, it really meant rebuilding the relationship with the changes that have to have been made. And that relationship might be that you've just had to find an extra 2 hours, 3 hours in your week to go to the physio. So you've had to rebuild your week, your rapport, your expectations, your finances, and you're rebuilding the dog physically with the physiotherapy. But I know that I always focused on the rebuild, meaning you've got to change the way that you and your dog have that swallows and Amazons relationship that I'm talking about. And again, that's really hard, is that a lot of the clients that I deal with, they admit one of the hardest things they found is changing that routine that they had. And I regularly am saying to people, I know that you used to like jogging with your dog, and you used to do like an 8-mile round trip. Well, let's cut it down. Let's go down to 4 miles. Or I know you used to like doing that walk around that park, but it triggers. So let's do half the walk. And there's all these sorts of things. And unfortunately, I think we find it very hard to kind of like modify our expectations.
It's all very emotional, isn't it? Because the dog likes his tennis ball. He likes his dentist stick before bed, so we can't cut that out. Do you know what I mean? You've got this emotional link to what you do and the lifestyle you've created and the expectations that the dog has at times. And it is difficult to navigate change, isn't it? But that's kind of what we all have to do, isn't it?
Yeah, and sorry, Les.
No, and just come to terms with the fact that your dog might be getting older and you have just difficult decisions ahead. It's people tend to go into avoidance mode, don't they?
Yeah, massive denial.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what we need to be doing is having conversations about you're not stopping, you're changing. And that's we have a phrase, arthritis is not the end of the road, it's just the start of a new direction. And that's applicable throughout life, because we started off talking about young dog, disease. This is a really difficult topic. It's a really difficult topic. Diagnosing arthritis in a 2-year-old, you don't want to be putting them on anti-inflammatories for life. What are we going to do? And we've got areas that are developing, as you said, stem cell regeneration, this sort of stuff. It's in its infancy. It's out of most people's price range. I would say that 1%, 0.5%, 0.25% of the country could afford to do it. And will insurance companies continue to support it? Don't know. We're looking at a huge outlay. So what is going to happen with that group of dogs that are diagnosed young? Lifestyle, weight control, reacting to the flares, having, not triggering progression. So the conversations that we're going to have with clients is going to get phenomenally difficult, because these are people that didn't choose that breed for it to be difficult. They chose it because it looked nice.
Yeah.
It's the next decade's going to be tough, I think.
Yeah. Managing the flares is really difficult.
Yeah.
That's the heartbreaking one, because your dog's fine, it's fine, and then it has a flare up, and then it gets better again, and then all of a sudden your head changes, doesn't it? It's like, oh, everything's fine, and then your dog has a flare up again, and it's a real coaster.
So we've got a handout in the member zone all about acute flares. There's one for vets and there's one for caregivers. Flares is part of OA. At the end of the day, flares it's just it's a thing. It's part of the disease, and we can only but refer to the human literature, because there is absolutely nothing about flares in canine OA. But what we can learn from humans when they've done studies is a lot of the flares that people report having are triggered by an event 24 to 72 hours prior. And these can be things for like people that have done gardening and they've been on their knees for too long, or people that went for a walk and tripped down a curb, or things like this. And what's interesting is that some people talk about flares being linked to psychosocial changes. So they've had something quite stressful happen and their arthritis pain flares, because pain isn't in the joint, it's in the brain. So we know that there are triggers that are identifiable. So what the human sector do is part of a management plan is they have the long-term plan that's looking after the disease. They have the short-term plan for when flares occur, but they also take the time to go, what triggered it and can we avoid that? So if somebody said, yeah, I played squash, and the last 5 times that I've played squash, I've actually been really quite disabled for, the week afterwards. The conversation has to be had of, well, let's change to badminton, let's not push your joints in directions they don't want to go anymore. So I definitely foresee over the next few years, we've got to start learning the skills to have these conversations. Sadly, and I'm going to be really rude what I'm about to say, sadly, I can see that humans are going to want a fix. And that's where, I'm a big supporter of regenerative medicine. We've got a great lecture coming up in the symposium from Russell Chandler and Cameron Black. It's not that I don't believe in it. My own dog had stem cells. It's not the answer, because you still will have to repeat it, and you still, to get the benefit of it, have to identify triggers that exacerbate your dog's condition. So these conversations are still going to be had.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Interesting as a word.
And that's why there's beer.
Yes. And that's why it's Easter Sunday and you're allowed to start drinking at 3.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, we better let you go. Get back down that car park to meet some people, haven't we?
I know. I'm looking for a new person for the team. I'm going to go hang out in a car park.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today, Hannah. It's been amazing.
No, thank you very much,
Yes.
Amy. Hopefully
Thank
we can all create a ripple effect.
Yeah, we've got to
Hopefully.
try anyway.
Yes.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, take care, guys.
Bye.
You too.
Thanks for listening. It's not just gun dogs and not just guard dogs, but all things canine, as we hope you have discovered. Please like, share and subscribe and help us spread a bit of common sense back into dog ownership. And a review wouldn't go amiss either. Catch up with Les and Ross again in about 14 days for more canine conversations. Until next time, stay well and enjoy your dogs. Any dog-related questions or topics, just drop an email to talk@cfba.uk or message us via facebook.com/gundogs and guard dogs podcast.